Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. So this is Monica Madhu. So how was my last video? I hope the explanation which I have given for introduction of NEET and then syllabus which is included in NEET, right? So I hope that is clear, and whereas I already explained what is science. What is science? A biological science first topic, and whereas in this video we are going to see second topic of our NEET preparation, and that is cell, the basic unit of life. Before entering into cell, the basic unit of life, first you must have some introductory part about biology. As I already said that I will be taking classes of biological science. Biological science is nothing but botany and zoology classes. So here, before entering into botany and zoology, first you must have an awareness of what is biology and some main points related to biology, right? So once if you look at here clearly, as I already mentioned here, science is again divided into two branches. One is biological science and the second one is physical science, right? So biological science is divided into botany, zoology and microorganisms. So whereas in the case of botany, we are going to learn about plant kingdom, start from small creepers and to a huge plants or trees. Okay, so that comes under botany. Whereas if you come to zoology, all animal kingdoms, even it may be a terrestrial animal or it may be an aquatic animal, it may be a whatever the animal you can take, birds, fishes or lion, tiger, whatever the organism, all those organisms comes under zoology branch. Next, microorganism, here itself the word is, these are the organisms which are very small, which are not seen by our naked eye, right? So those are microorganisms which include bacteria, fungi, virus, protozoans, microarthropods, right? So all these comes under microorganisms, right? So physical science, as you all know that physics and chemistry is a separate part in your textbook. Whereas coming to environment, what is this environment and what do it contain? Environment contain two factors. Environment contain two things. One is living organisms and the second one is non-living organisms, right? So living organisms, which include, if you see here, living organisms is also called as biotic factor. Living organism, living is nothing but which have life, right? Which have life. So those are biotic factor. Okay, so in this biotic factor we are going to see unicellular, multicellular organisms, whereas in the case of non-living organisms we will see biotic factors. So what these biotic factors are actually, that is air, water, temperature, soil, pressure, humidity, moisture. So whatever the factor, external factor which is supporting for the life, which is supporting for the biotic factor, is called as living organisms and non-living organisms. Okay, non-living organisms is nothing but these organisms, they don't have a property of growth, they won't reproduce, they won't perform any metabolism, but these non-living factor, they will support the life of biotic factor. Okay, so this is a small introduction which is related to our science and branches of science. So what about these all unicellular and multicellular? When I am discussing about a cell, then I will give a clear cut idea about unicellular and multicellular. So let us see what the biology is. What is the meaning of biology? Look at here, I said science is divided into biological science and physical science. Okay, so here we are going to discuss about this part. What is this? We are going to discuss about biological science here. Okay, biological science. So biology, once if you see, is one of the branches of science. Okay, already I have given a flow chart. Science is divided into two parts. So here I have mentioned biological science. So this biological science is a branch which existed from science. So in this way, biology is one of the branches of science. Okay, very fine. Next thing, what is the meaning of biology? Meaning of biology. So to give a complete meaning of biology, first thing you have to do is you have to break a word into two equal halves. It means bios and logy. Okay, biology, a word contain two words. What is that? Bios and logy. Bios is nothing but life, and whereas logy is nothing but a study. So whatever you can take, it may be a zoology. If you take an example of zoology, zoo is animal, logy is nothing but study. Okay, microbiology, micro is nothing but microorganisms, and logy is nothing but study. Wherever you find a word logy, it indicates it is a study which is done on some living organisms, right? So next, bio is nothing but life and logy is nothing but study. So in a simple way we can say study of life is called biology. What is biology? Study of life. Next, if we come to definitions of biology, biology is the scientific study of life. Biology is the scientific study of life. It is a natural science with broad scope. Broad scope here, it nothing but biology is divided into two branches. What is that? It is botany and zoology. Not only botany and zoology. What do botany contain? Botany contain plant. In plant again we have many branches like cell biology, cytology, histology, anatomy, physiology. Whereas if you come to zoology, again it is again divided into many branches. So in this way it have a broad scope. It is not a it doesn't have a narrow scope. It have a broad scope. Biology have a broad scope. Next, biology term was first used by Lamarck and Treviranus. Okay, these two are the persons who first used the term biology in the year 1802. In the year 1802. Next, these 2 points what I have mentioned here, these three, you can take an example of these three. These three which I have mentioned on the board are very important. They may ask it in your NEET examination. Okay, so what is that? Father of biology and even father of zoology, both are same person, and that is Aristotle. Aristotle is considered as a father of biology and father of zoology. Okay, so this Aristotle, what he did is he have written a theory. And the theory of Aristotle is called as Aristotle biology. Okay, Aristotle biology. So in this Aristotle biology, what he did, he made some classifications. By seeing the external morphological structure, he made some classifications, and those classifications are based on morphological structure, and they are plant and animals. Those are plants and animals. Okay, so this is the first classification. We can call it as Plantae and Animalia. Okay, so this is the first classification which is made by Aristotle. So this Aristotle is considered as father of biology and even zoology. Okay, so he made some contributions for a branch called biology and zoology. Okay, up to here it's very fine. Next, coming to the next very important point is father of Indian biology. So whenever you are preparing for any examination, so if you have a general scientist father, then you have to write it down. At the same time, those who belongs to India, the scientist who made some contributions for the first time from India, so those also you have to note it down. Whereas in the case of father of biology and zoology is Aristotle, and whereas father of Indian biology is Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. And this Jagadish Chandra Bose made many contributions in our biology subject, and whereas when we are discussing in the future classes, then we will learn more about Jagadish Chandra Bose. Okay, so this is something which is related to our biology subject. Whereas coming to what is cell, you can see children, we have many organisms. Start from, you cannot see some organisms, you can feel them, right? You can feel them. Just if you take an example of coronavirus, did you see ever the coronavirus? No, we didn't. Just scientists or doctors, they said that there is a virus which is causing some diseases, okay, which is a pandemic, which created pandemic situation in India, not only India, throughout the world. So that coronavirus, it is not visible to our naked eye, but it is existing in the world. So in this way we have many living organisms, start from microorganisms to a huge multicellular organisms. right? So some may be in the form of small groups, so some may be in the form of single organisms, whereas some they form a colony and live in a colony, or there are some organisms which make some group of cells to form a complete organism. Study of cell is called cell biology or cytology. It is very important that study of cell, just now we have discussed about cell, unicellular organism, multicellular and all those, right? So that study, whatever we are studying about cell, it is called as cell biology or cytology. Okay, next, under the cell biology and the cytology we have n number of branches, but first remember that study of cell is called as cell biology and cytology. Next, so to observe a cell, just now I said that if it is a cell, we cannot see a cell with the naked eye, then we want some instrument to observe, to see the structure of an organism, right? So if you take an example of plant and animal, we can see them, right? If it is a rat, okay, even rat we can see with the naked eye, but whereas if there are very small cells which are present inside a cell, inside an organism, if you take an example of rat, okay, rat we can see with the naked eye, but the cells which are present inside the rat, can we see them? No, we cannot. And the reason behind that is there are very microscopic in size. They are very small, which cannot be seen by the naked eye. So for that reason we must have an instrument, and that instrument was first invented by son and father. These two are son and father, and they belongs to Dutch, okay, and the first microscope was invented by Dutch scientists. They are son and father, okay. Who are those? Hans and Jacques Janssen. Hans and Jacques Janssen. In the year 1590, they made a microscope. Okay, so after the discovery of microscope, there were many scientists who observed many number of minute or microscopic organisms under a microscope. Okay, and then what they made, they gave some morphological structures for many organisms like bacteria, virus, yeast, fungi, protozoans, algae. Okay, many number of microorganisms which are not seen by the naked eye, they came into existence. Okay, so you can simply say that before the discovery of before the invention of a microscope, there were only plant and animal which can be seen and which are observed. Whereas in the case of after discovery of after invention of a microscope by Jacques Janssen, what happened? Hans and Jacques Janssen in the year 1590. So many scientists like Athenius Kircher, Jan Sommerden, Antonie van Leeuwenhoek and Robert Hooke. We will discuss about all these in the within a 5 minutes. But whereas these scientists, what they did, they gave many structures of different cells. Okay, next, if we see the microscope of Jacques and Janssen, just now I said na, this is the first microscope which is proposed, which is invented, and that first microscope is made by Jacques Janssen, and the microscope was like this. So if we observe normal in our school laboratory, we have a cylindrical microscope, right? So that is completely different than the microscope which is invented in the past. Okay, so this is a microscope which is invented by Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. Okay, this microscope contain here lenses. Next, sample or sample holder is nothing but specimen, where we place specimen. Next, focus knob to adjust light properly. Next, this is screw. So this is a simple microscope which is made by Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. Now let us see actually what the Antonie van Leeuwenhoek was, and what he was. He was a fabric quality checker, he used to check the quality of the fabric. So as a part of to check the quality of the fabric, he used to make some microscopes to check the finer quality, right? So as a part of that, he used to make some microscopes. So in the year 1674, Antonie van Leeuwenhoek molded his own microscope and observed living bodies, you can call like organisms, living organisms under a drop of water. So what he did, he took a drop of water, he placed here. Where did he place? He placed here at this spot where we will hold sample, specimen, okay, and then he started observing cells. So what cells he observed under microscope? So children, what cells he observed under microscope? Mean he observed bacteria, he observed yeast, protozoan, red blood cells, and what? Where he observed? He observed in water, okay. So to remember all this, I made a code. Actually this point, the first organisms which are observed by Antonie van Leeuwenhoek, this question asked many times in the examination. Okay, in many competitive exams we will find this question, that what are the first observations of Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. He observed some living organisms in a drop of water, and what are those? If we see, bacteria, yeast, protozoan, red blood cells in water, okay. So if you see bacteria, the alphabet starts with, the word starts with B. Next here yeast mean Y, protozoan mean P, red blood cells mean RBC, in water, where he observed in water, so it is water. So if you see bypass, if you write by in an English, what is that? Bypass. By mean BY, okay. So combinedly you can say by BY mean bacteria and yeast, pass is nothing but protozoan, RBC, where he observed in water, okay. So that, and the code is bypass surgery RBC and water. When we perform bypass surgery, RBC, blood comes out, and what that blood contain? It contain water. So this, children, that is all about Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. And now when you say discovery of cell, discovery, what is the meaning of discovery? First you must have a clarity about discovery and invention. Invention is nothing but discovery. First, if you understand discovery is nothing but already that is existing on the earth, and if you are going and searching it, so that is called as discovery. You can take an example of microorganisms. Microorganisms are living organisms, they are existing on the earth. They are very small in nature, so that's the reason we cannot see with the naked eye. So what we will do, we will discover it. So if we find those organisms, so that process is called as, that method is called as discovery. And if you come to an example of invention is nothing but examples are microscope, radio, TV. So n number of examples are there. Invention is nothing but it is something which is not existing on the earth, which we make for our convenience. So that is called as invention. There is a great difference between invention and discovery. Discovery of cell is nothing but who first observed cell, who first discovered cell, and that contribution goes to Robert Hooke. Don't forget this, the first cell was observed by Antonie van Leeuwenhoek, whereas the first cell was discovered by Robert Hooke. Okay, you should not be confused here. This question also very important, that discovery of cell is made by Robert Hooke and first cell was identified by Antonie van Leeuwenhoek. So he is a British scientist, and he made his own microscope, and actually his work is, he used to observe some insects, birds, some feathers of birds under his own microscope. But suddenly what he did, he observed a cork cells. Cork cells are nothing but it is a thin bark layer contain cork cells, of which tree? Spanish oak tree. So this Robert Hooke, he took Spanish oak tree and took the bark part, and from the bark he took cork cells. In the middle there will be some dense cells, those are called as cork cells. He took the cork cells and he observed under his own microscope, or magnifying, a simple microscope which is made by himself. Okay, so when he observed that, then he observed a cells like this. Okay, then he observed the cells which are present in the cork cells are like this, like honeycomb. So the microscope which is made by Robert Hooke was this. Okay, the Robert Hooke's microscope. So it contain oil lamp, it contain water flask. The microscope which is made by Robert Hooke contain eyepiece, barrel, focusing screw, objective, specimen holder. Okay, this microscope is a simple microscope which is made by Robert Hooke, and under this microscope he observed cork cells like this. Okay, it is something like honeycomb. Okay, so then he saw some empty spaces inside the cell. So that's the reason he called that empty spaces or empty rooms as cell. What's the meaning of cell? Actually, the meaning of cell is empty room like structure. Okay, so when he observed the cells under his own microscope, then he observed the cell structure is something like hexagonal like this. Okay, so this is a Spanish oak tree, and from this Spanish oak tree he took bark part, thin bark part. From the slice of thin bark part he observed cork cells, and those cork cells are like this. When we come to science or biology, science is nothing but experiment or activities. Okay, so without any proof, without any evidence, we cannot come to a conclusion, right? So whereas in the case of science, whereas in the case of cell also, we must perform some activity to come to some conclusion, right? Whereas in the case of Robert Hooke, he observed cells of cork cell, right, observed cells of Spanish oak tree. In the same way, we cannot bring a Spanish oak tree here into our classroom, right? We cannot. So what we have to do, we have to take some apparatus which is easily available to us, and that is matchstick. Okay, take matchstick, soak it in the water, and then after some time take the matchstick and cut it into thin slices. Take one piece of that thin slice, put it on the slide, and then observe under microscope. If you observe under normal microscope, you will observe the structure like this. Okay, so whereas in the case of that oak tree, bark cells or oak tree, and then whereas here matchstick, all these are dead cells. Okay, so we can observe dead cells under a microscope. Now there is a question, can we observe living cells under a microscope? And the answer is absolutely yes, we can observe living cells with a normal microscope which is easily available in our school laboratory. Okay, so for that what we can do, we can perform an activity which is given in the textbook, and that is activity number 2, observing cells in onion peel. Onion peel is nothing but it is a plant material, so you are going to observe plant cells now. What you have to do, first you take the bulb of onion. Okay, first you take the bulb of onion and then cut the small piece of it. There will be some layers, right? So take one layer from it and then try to break that into 2 pieces with the hand itself. Don't use a knife here. Take the onion and then cut it into small piece. Try to break it into small piece. Then you will see some thin layer which is attached inside that layer. You will see some thin membrane which is attached to that thin layers. Okay, so you take that thin membrane, very transparent, very delicate membrane, you take it, put it on the slide. Slide is nothing but it is a rectangular glass piece which is used to observe specimens under microscope. So imagine that this is our onion bulb. Take a part of it, a thin layer, and then try to break that into 2 equal parts. In the middle you will find some thin, delicate, transparent membrane. You take that membrane and then put it on the slide by using a drop of water, and then cover that with a cover slip. Okay, next if you observe that this thin membrane under a microscope, you will see a very fine structure like this. Clearly you can observe. Okay, so that will be something like this. When you draw the picture of that image here in your notebook, so that will be like this. So it means these rectangular shapes are called as cells, and inside the cell we will observe one small dot like structure, and those dot like structures are called as nucleus. Okay, all the cells contain that small dot like structure and it is called as nucleus. Okay, so this is a onion peel thin membrane cells. So what do it contain? It contains cell wall. As it is a plant cell contains cell wall as an outer layer. Okay, so it is an outer layer, cell wall. In this is cell. Okay, so inside the cell you will find a round part which I have mentioned here. Those are nucleus. All the cells contain nucleus in it. So there is a question now. Can we observe human cell? Can we observe animal cell? Animal cell is nothing but we can take an example of human being. Okay, just we can perform this activity to observe human cell. What is that? Activity number 3, observing human cheek cell. Cheek is nothing but this is, okay, cheek cell. You take any blunt material, ice cream spoon will be na, you take it and then scrap. First you must clean your mouth and then scrap the inner layer of your cheek. Okay, you scrap, it should not be sharp, it should not be hard. Okay, you take any blunt ended or blunt edged material and then scrap the inner layer of your cheek. Take that material, put it on the slide, add a drop of water onto it and then observe under microscope. We didn't use any stain here. Okay, even in the case of plant cell or animal cell, without any stain we can observe. Then if you observe under microscope, the cells will be like this. Okay, is there any similarity between this shape and here this shape? No. Okay, whereas in the case of animal cells have irregular shaped cells, whereas in the case of plant cell, those are mostly rectangular. Okay, so if you observe the cells under microscope, human cheek cell, it will be something like this. Then when you draw under in your notebook, it will be like this. So what these parts are? So these are the cells. Imagine that this is a cell, irregular shaped cell, and this irregular shaped cell has, inside the cell you will find cytoplasm. This complete layer is called as cytoplasm and it is covered by a membrane called cell membrane, and in the middle you will find a dense body called nucleus. Now let me ask a question for you. What the difference between this diagram and this diagram? If you observe clearly, this is a plant cell. Onion is nothing but plant cell. Here it is an animal cell. Human being is nothing but animal cell, right? So this animal cell and a plant cell have a difference. What that is? Here plant cell have cell wall as a outer layer. Okay. So beneath the cell wall we will find cell membrane. Okay, whereas in the case of here in the animal cell we don't find cell wall, we find a direct layer called cell membrane. So animal cells do not contain any cell wall, it contains cell membrane, whereas in the case of plant cell we will see cell wall. Okay, beneath the cell wall we will find cell membrane. And the similarity between this and this is, in the middle you have cytoplasm, here also in the middle you have empty space, right? So that empty space is called as cytoplasm. Next in the middle you will find a dense body and that dense body is called as nucleus. In the case of plant cell also you will find nucleus. If you see the differences between plant cell and animal cell is different. First difference is plant cell contains cell wall, animal cell does not contain any cell wall. Whereas in the case of a similarity, nucleus is present in plant cell and even nucleus is present in animal cell. Cell membrane is present in plant cell, cell membrane is present even in animal cell. So these are the similarities between plant and animal cell. So the conclusion after performing all this activity is, we can observe dead cells and even we can observe living cells under microscope. If you take an example of onion, this is a living cell, right? This is a living cell. Whereas if you take an example of this human cheek, it is also a living cell. So this is an activity which is given in our textbook.